Hey everybody, this is Jeff Sutherland, Jeff Sutherland Show, and today Chase, my partner, is on location selling houses. And I wanted to switch gears a little bit today and share with you how I do buyer consultations. And I think hopefully you'll enjoy it. If you're an agent out there and you want to learn how to become a better fiduciary agent to your clients and learn how to give more value to your clients so it's a 10 experience, I think you're going to love this. If you're a buyer, I also think you're going to love it because this is what a buyer's agent should be doing for you. They should be doing all these things in order to make your experience a 10. So with that being said, let's launch into the Jeff Sutherland Show today.
Welcome to the Jeff Sutherland Show. Let's grow today as we learn from decades of real estate and leadership experience.
We want you to know that when you log into this show, you're going to get authentic conversation. We're going to give it to you straight, and it's going to be real.
You see, I don't really like to show homes unless I sit down with the buyer and actually go through the process, because if I just go out and show them homes, I'm somewhat cheating them on the process. And I want to alleviate their stress, reduce their anxiety. And how do I do that? I do that through education. So this is typically how I walk through a buyer presentation. I'm even going to show you my slide deck that I use. And if you're interested in piggybacking off of my template, you could certainly use mine and customize it for yourself. But you will see now why I get the fee that I want to charge for buyers, because I do a great job with explaining the entire process. So I'm going to walk you through the key points of a buyer presentation. The first point is to build rapport. You have to build rapport with the client. That means you need to find commonalities with them. You need to show them gratitude. You need to compliment them wherever you can. When you go into a home or a business or an office, you always want to be complimentary with people. I believe in a couple things. Number one, I believe in the 30-second rule by John Maxwell, which says within the first 30 seconds, you compliment the person. And I try to find something genuine to do to compliment them. And I also believe in an acronym called MOPFI, M-O-P-F-I. That stands for Make Other People Feel Important. And I follow that as much as I possibly can. So I'm building rapport with the buyer. And after that, that could take, 10, 15 minutes. You might have some common friends, associates. You might come from a similar part of the country. There's all kinds of different things there you can focus on. Now, the second thing, number two, would be a needs analysis. Now, I actually love the book Ninja Selling. I'd highly recommend it. And they actually have a webpage that's you can use and actually use some of their tools for free. And they actually have a buyer questionnaire. And your company may have a buyer questionnaire as well. So I've taken that questionnaire and I've morphed it to make it my own. And that's where I start asking questions of the buyer. Where would you like to live? Do you have a certain school system that you prefer? Are there any amenities that you want to be close to? How close do you want to be to a freeway system? Do you know the square footage that you're looking for? How many bedrooms, bathrooms? Do you want a pool? Do you want a first one story or a second story? Would you like an HOA or a non-HOA? So there's so many questions you're going to be asking them. And when you ask them these questions, the prospect, the buyer, feels heard. They feel heard at that point. And that's the key here. Is it's all about educating you on what their needs are. This is not about you. This presentation is not about you verbally vomiting on the prospect. This is about you learning about their needs, and they really, really appreciate it. So during this time, you're going to take very, very good notes. You're going to get out your pages of questions. You're going to write down as much as you possibly can about what they're looking for. Do they have a house to sell? Is this going to be a finance purchase? Is this going to be a cash purchase? So you're getting all those specifics squared away. So you've built rapport. You sit down, you do a nice needs analysis with the buyer, prospective buyer, and now you're starting to have a conversation. You're conversational. This really isn't about talking to a bunch of slides. This is a relationship where you're going to show your forte, your skills, and they will in turn trust you with probably the biggest purchase of their life. So now I'd like to show you my slide deck that I use as I jump into the third part of the presentation, and that's called demonstration. Demonstration is where we demonstrate ourselves. We demonstrate our knowledge in the marketplace. We demonstrate our company, all the different things that we're going to offer the buyer. And so I'm going to just share real quickly what that looks like to you. Okay, my friends. So this is the Canva slide deck. And in my company, we actually get a Canva Pro account with our subscription to eXp Realty, which is fantastic, with thousands of templates that are in the program that we can use. And that is really cool. So I'm going to give you a sneak peek at what I use. And if you're interested in using something similar to this, just let me know. First of all, I will demonstrate who I am. I'll tell a little bit about my story, my background. In my case, I've been in the business almost 25 years. I've owned multiple brokerages. I've supervised and mentored over 2,500 agents. I have an MBA. I'm a certified mentor. These are the things that I want to really stress to them. And I've sold hundreds and hundreds of homes. So I really am the right man for the job. So a little bit of self-edification actually is okay. You don't have to sound like a narcissist, of course. The self-edification is a good thing. I'll also show them a quick video. I would call a sizzle video about myself, who I am, and my background. That really kind of sets the stage. I'm separating myself from the competition. See, because at the end of this presentation, I'm going to ask for a fee for my service. And if I don't do a good job during this point, that fee will be questioned. So I don't want that fee at the very end to be questioned. I want it to be embraced. So I'm going to continue to move through this and talk about the team that I run, my transaction coordinator, my business partner, and explain a little bit about the strengths of what they bring to the table. I'll be talking about fiduciary service and what that looks like. Some of these basic tenets of agency, confidentiality, being good with accounting, reasonable care and skill, obedience, loyalty, importance of disclosures. All these things are important, and I talk about how important all those are to the agency relationship that I'll be having with that client. And I like to tell stories too, because stories typically bring home the point even better. So I tell stories about how those fiduciary duties show up in the relationship with me and the buyer. Now, I talk about how I do real estate a little bit differently, how I like to educate my buyers and prepare them and always stay one step ahead of them. This is my career. I personally do it full time. I want them to know that this is a very dedicated professional with years and years of experience behind myself, and I plan on giving them everything I have with my expertise of the contract to all the negotiation that happens during the contract as well. Then you have an actual breakdown of fiduciary service. I just mentioned earlier, these are some of the things that we owe our clients in an agency relationship. And again, I will talk about all these things and tell stories of how I've exhibited these things in the past. I do believe in loyalty, and I believe in a relationship of loyalty. So when I get to the end and I ask them to actually do business with me and hire me as their buyer's agent, there'll be loyalty both ways, right? There'll be loyalty that I'm showing them because I'm working exclusively with them. And I'm also hoping that they'll be as loyal back to me, because to me, that's a win-win relationship. I talk a little bit about our country. Currently, we're in around, I believe, 24 countries, about 87,000 agents. We are a very, very big player in the international real estate scene. And I talk about our technology and how that helps us improve our relationship with our clients. So it's nice to know people are doing business with not only an experienced agent, but a well-to-do company that is doing great things for our agents. And we are now 16 years old as a company. Moving forward, I'm going to ask them just to review anything that I didn't miss, that I may have missed before. So questions here, I want to just make sure that I'm clear. It's kind of a restatement of some of the key questions I asked them before. And that shows that I was learning and I was listening and I've comprehended what they've said, but definitely not a total rehash of all the questions on the front end. These are just some questions that I can review. We have the home buying process. Now, this is something I'm not going to talk to this slide at this point. I'm going to walk through the entire buyer process from A to Z without looking at this screen, giving them the narrative of everything from getting pre-qualified, sending in proof of funds, if they're a cash buyer, meeting with the lender, shopping for a home, putting earnest money in, all the different things, due diligence, loan approval, appraisal, closing table, inspections, everything is involved. And I'm going to walk them through that in a conversational way. What am I doing during this time? I'm convincing them that I know real estate and I know it very well. And I know the real estate contract as good as anybody. So this is a good opportunity for you to showcase your skills. How do you get good at this? You read your contract. You read it multiple times. That is key in this process. So I explained the whole process of buying a house. I talk about how I have a 126-point buyer acquisition program that's actually outlined in my appendix in this presentation, which they can look at later. I want them to know there's so many different things that we do as an agent behind the scenes to help a deal move forward and to eliminate the stress that's on their plate. Okay. And again, I walk through these different processes when I go through the different steps of buying a house. And so I put a graphical visualization, a graphical narrative together so they see what are the next steps: finding your home, finding a lender, getting approved. I also let them know with my company, I get access to a proprietary system called ZenList. That means that any EXP agent around the world can put their listing on this particular platform, and I can show my buyers these listings before they even hit the MLS, before they even hit coming soon status. They get to see these properties on ZenList. That's kind of a big deal. They get to see stuff before everybody else does. Just another benefit of working with me and EXP. Okay, just again, more graphics on the process of buying a house. So I put all these in here because I want the buyer to read these things later, and I want them to internalize them. Okay. Now I have more of a scheduling your move slide, which is all about, these are all the steps you take weeks before you actually move. It's a great checklist for my clients. Closing day. What happens during the closing day? All these are here. Again, not talking to slides, giving them the story and then saying, hey, these are the slides. Please walk through these later because you're not going to remember everything I'm going to tell you today. I have amazing client testimonials, which is great. So I show them that I have written reviews. I have a Rolodex of vendors that I use out there in the Phoenix area that I've personally vetted, I've personally used in many situations. I want them to know that I have all the people that I run with that can help them buy a house. I have YouTube videos and reviews that I can show them right there on the spot. I can show them very compelling reviews right there in the appointment if I choose to do so. So it's very interactive. It's fun. I do that as well. I talk about the compensation and how it's changed from the old process to the new process and how buyer agents are compensated. Now, I'm not asking for my fee yet, but I want them to understand how the process works with compensation. Now I'm going to talk about my VIP buyer program. My VIP buyer program is a special list of partners and vendors that I have partnered with. And when these buyers go to these affiliates and these vendors, they will be offered discounts if they simply mention my name, my team's name. That way that buyer can save money when they use these services because many of them need to be used when they move. I'm not receiving any monetary value whatsoever. I'm just connecting them with top vendors out in the community, moving services, handyman services. We have flooring here. These are just a few examples of some of the vendors I work with where they can get amazing discounts by simply mentioning my name. When you can tell a buyer, listen, I can save you up to $5,000 in different discounts, that separates you from everyone else out there in the real estate world. These are things that most buyers agents typically don't offer. This is going above and beyond for my clients. Now, after I talk about the VIP program, I'm going to get into the forms. I don't believe it's fiduciary service when you get to the point where the buyer wants to write an offer and all of a sudden you send them a electronic signature document with all the documents that they have to go over in the heat of the moment when they want to buy a house. I want them to get used to these forms at the very beginning because some people would like to read them. They would like to actually know what they're signing. So I review the forms now in the buyer consultation. Just about every form I have signed at the buyer consultation or soon thereafter via an electronic signature, because in this presentation, I'm going to go over the forms. And these are what I would call preliminary documents. They're preliminary because these are disclosures and advisories, wire fraud advisories. I want them to understand all the different pieces of knowledge that they can have prior to go seeing a house. So it's really a good process. And I will go over every one of these and explain what they are. For example, in Arizona, we have the buyer advisory. It's several pages of links for buyers to go in and research the area, research everything from Superfund sites to expansive soil to natural parks. It gives you everything you need to research the area where the buyer wants to go. So we're equipping the buyer and helping them become more knowledgeable before their purchase. That's something I give to them, and they sign off that they've received it. I talk to them about wire fraud and how this is a major, major problem around the world, and how they absolutely need to talk to their escrow officer in person over the phone before that wire happens. And afterwards, when the wire is received, these are important items to get the buyers ready for the process. I talk about how bad it is out there, $2.9 billion in 2023. And that's the kind of stuff we're talking about. A lot of complaints. I talk about agency and what that looks like in the realm of real estate. What are the fiduciary duties? I remind them of the things that I'm doing for them. In fact, when I do those things for them, I'm asking them to become loyal to me as a reciprocity, right? This is a give and take relationship, and hopefully it's a win-win. So when I'm their agent, they're all about doing business with me. We're focused on each other. And so I go over what agency looks like. We also have an EXP, an affiliated business arrangement. These are companies that we've aligned with, that when our clients use these companies, EXP derives monetary benefit when that happens. So we need to disclose that properly when we talk to our buyer clients, and also in some cases, our seller clients. And then finally, we get to the buyer broker representation agreement. What I love about EXP is we've written some of the best forms in the industry. In fact, we've been told by the Department of Justice they're happy with what we're doing because we're meeting the demands of the NAR lawsuit that happened about a year ago. And we've done these forms in such a manner that the buyers, the consumers, have a lot of protections. And that's a good thing. Buyers should be protected. Sellers should be protected. So the forms that we've created came from hundreds of collective years of experience at our executive level and a collaboration of all of our brokers from around the country. So I explained to them what a buyer broker agreement is. This is an employment agreement between the buyer and the buyer's agent. And just like the seller has an employment agreement when they use a listing agreement, the same thing is when we have a buyer and a buyer's agent. So this is when I name my fee, and I tell them that I'm going to ask for X amount of a fee. And I tell them these are the things I'm doing for that fee. I also explained that when we make an offer on a home, I'm going to try to extract that fee from the seller and any other party except for the buyer. In the case where I cannot, and that seller is not going to cooperate or they don't want to pay the buyer's agent fee, I will go back to the buyer, and then they have choices to make. They can actually decide to pay the difference of what my fee is or not. If they don't want to pay the difference, then I can choose to downgrade my fee to the buyer, or we can decide that this isn't going to be a win-win. When they sign this buyer broker at the very beginning, they're agreeing to pay me X amount of money. That's what my fee is. And that's a legally binding document agreement between me and the buyer. So at the end of the day, when the deal closes, that's what I get paid. That's my employment agreement with the buyer and myself. So that's the compensation I'll be getting at the end of the transaction, whether it's paid through the seller or whether it's paid by the buyer. This is important, and we do not show homes unless we have this properly documented. This is good. It's good for the buyers out there. They know exactly what are their obligations, and they also know that they always have choices because everything's negotiable in real estate, including compensation. So by the time I get to this point, my friends, I've done a really good job explaining my value. I've explained my VIP buyer program. I've explained the entire process from A to Z of buying a house. By now, it should be pretty apparent that I know what I'm doing, and I'm very excited to work with that person. And I've imparted a lot of knowledge. So the forms are critical because at this point, it's time to ask for the business. It's time to ask for the business. And then I also show, by the way, an addendum, what we would use if I were to ask the seller to contribute money towards my commission. That's another form. But essentially, at this point, I have the ability to ask for the business. And this is key. Closing the deal, asking them to move forward. Are there any questions that you have? Now, if they have any objections, there's a way to handle that too. I believe in what's called the AEIOU method. If they have an objection, you simply acknowledge that objection, and you acknowledge it by restating their objection. And then you show empathy for that objection. So I hear you saying A, B, and C. I understand. And in fact, if I were you, I'd feel the same way. That's acknowledgement and empathy. And then you get to the I, which is isolating the objection. Is there anything else out there that's keeping you from moving forward besides this objection? And if there isn't, then that's good. You can deal with that objection. And you deal with that objection by giving them options. This is where you can get creative, right? Maybe they don't want to get tied in to a buyer's agent for a long time. Maybe they don't want to sign a buyer broker agreement that lasts for 6 months. Well, what if they signed a buyer broker agreement that lasted for 1 month? And you said, listen, give me an opportunity to show you what I can do in the next 30 days. And if you're not happy with my services, and if we don't have you on a contract by then, you can certainly move on. And that's one way that I've often alleviated some of the concerns from the buyer. So acknowledgement, empathy, isolate the objection, give them options. And then finally, urgency. The letter U stands for urgency. It's time to move this thing forward. Now, when I finally get a handshake and they're ready to go, at that point, we sit down and we go over next steps. What are the next steps to the deal? And in the next steps of the deal, we're going to talk about lending. Are they going to finance? Are they going to go cash? We're going to get them in touch with a lender. And we're going to give them a few choices so they have options. After that, we're going to start looking at properties and we're going to go shopping, the fun part. And we'll start talking to them about what that looks like, what that process is. Typically don't show more than 5 houses in one time because buyers typically forget. After the first 5, they start melding some of these homes together and they look the same. And it's hard to remember sometimes. I often ask them too, if they have a list of homes, to drive that area before we go see the houses, because in many instances, they may not like the area. And that will eliminate that particular home. Saves them time, saves me time. So that's my whole process from pretty much A to Z. I stay very close to the buyer. And because I do such a thorough job with this, I get people to pay me what I'm worth. In the absence of value, cost always becomes the biggest issue. Well, there's not going to be any absence of value when I give you a presentation. So if you're a buyer's agent out there and you're looking for help in this area, hit me up. I could even share my slide deck with you and you could work on that on your own, customize it. Or if you want some individual coaching, I coach agents around the country to improve their business. I'd be happy to help you. Just reach out. I want this today to be all about buyers understanding how a buyer's agent should treat them. And also buyer's agents learning some tips of the trade so you can be exceptional when you sit down with a buyer. So you've seen the Jeff Sutherland show today, and I hope that you've enjoyed it. And let me know if you enjoyed this presentation. Have a great day, everybody. I'll talk to you soon.